Hello, folks. Welcome to the stream. It is I, Craig, and I am here. I'm excited, and we're going to start painting in just a second. Before we do that, though, I'd love to direct your attention to some stuff in the description of this stream. By the way, before I get started with that, actually, everyone, let me know if you can hear me okay. We had some mic issues the last time I tried to do this. I think it should be coming through all right this time, but if not, please let me know in the chat. I am paying attention to that, so if you can't hear me, let me know. And actually, if you can hear me, let me know there too, because that will ease my anxiety. All right, cool. Well, with that aside, let's go ahead and take a quick peek at what is in the description beneath this live stream. Aha! Hey, Tacitus. You can hear me, but it is echoey. Let me see if I can move my microphone in such a way that it is less echoey. All right, my microphone is now closer to my face. Hopefully it's a little less echoey there. All right. Hey, Marshall Stern. There's my dad in the chat. Hey, Dad. All right. So, now that we've established that you can hear the words that I'm saying, let's take a quick peek at the stuff in the description of this live stream. And I'm actually looking at a screenshot, just because it's a little easier for me to work with here. So, I'm going to be using a few different things over the course of this stream for the sake of doing this here digital painting. First and foremost, we're using software called Krita. Krita is a really excellent freeware open source piece of software that is designed for painting and drawing and image editing. It's really excellent. So this is the program you will see me using right now, actually, but also as I continue and I do some painting. So that's first of all. Second thing is I am using a drawing tablet. This is a thing called a Huion Kamvas 13. If you're at all familiar with drawing tablets, then you've probably heard of Cintiqs. Cintiq is the brand that is sort of like, it's almost become synonymous with drawing tablets, or it's been synonymous with drawing tablets for the past 20, maybe even 30 years. They've been the market leader. They're regarded as the most high quality of all the drawing tablet brands. However, they're also real expensive. And over the past few years, they've had a couple of competitors, namely Huion and XP Pen, that have put out some really quite good stuff that almost rivals Cintiq in quality, and it's a whole lot cheaper. So if you are someone who is interested in digital painting, I would strongly recommend picking up a drawing tablet of some kind. Doesn't have to be the kind I'm using, but you can get them for not as expensive as you might fear, and it really, really helps. You can draw with a mouse, but it's real handy to be able to, have things like pressure sensitivity and whatnot, and that sort of fine control over where exactly you're putting lines and such. So, okay, that's the second thing. Third thing I'm going to be using, I created a template file for Together in Battle assets specifically. Let me redo that. There is a Krita version and there's a Photoshop version. Both of them are exactly the same. They just, Krita works in Krita and the Photoshop one works in pretty much everything else. They are layered files. You're going to see it in just a second. They make it a lot easier to figure out how to paint things that go with the existing portrait assets. You can pick the colors that are already used there to maintain consistency in the palette. You can scale things so that they fit and blend well with other stuff. You'll see as I paint how that helps. And then last of all, Together in Battle itself. the game that we are drawing assets for. Obviously, that is going to be real helpful if you want to make assets for Together in Battle. Okay, enough of that. You get the gist. That's all in the description down below the stream. I have officially beaten the horse dead. So this right here that I've now switched to, this is the portrait asset maker. This is the template file that I was just talking about. So this has templates for 4 different species. We've got sprigates, shadowlings, lizards, and humans. Whichever one you want to work on, you just make it visible by tapping the little eyeball next to it. And you can expand, and there are a bunch of different like sub-layers that sort of become available to you. And I recently updated this file. There is now a frame showing you exactly where you need to like sort of paint within to get the correct image dimensions for the full-size stuff like the head and the body. But we're not going to be doing Sprigate stuff today, unless there are requests for Sprigate stuff, and then I very well might. But instead, we're going to start, I think, with some human clothes. Specifically, I think there is some demand for a bit more variety in human clothes, and in particular, female human clothes. That seems to be what the masses desire. So that is what I will be focusing on today. So there is one particular user on the Discord whose name I'm blanking on, but they were very insistent on getting clothing kind of like this for a female human portrait. I'm not looking to, do any of the old copyright infringement here, but I'm going to try to do something which sort of roughly evokes this. Just to make folks happy. I'm also going to try at some point to do a chemise dress in the style of this famous painting of Marie Antoinette. Obviously I have cut off the head, but that is the reference for the dress. And I'm pretty sure this is a public domain one, so I could copy this pretty closely and probably be fine. But one way or another, let's go ahead and get started. So here in the human group, you see a bunch of different elements for the portrait that are sort of arranged roughly in order of how they have to be layered in order to look right. So we are going to be ignoring pretty much everything between the body and all this stuff up here. We're going to create our own new layer, and this is going to be where the clothing lives. We could actually put it just beneath the head, and that would also be fine. Right? The main thing is we want to be drawing over the body here, because we don't want to have to recreate the body. We want to just sort of layer clothing on top of it. And just so you can visualize what this looks like, let me just do something real sloppy here. Oh, look. It's a dress. It's overlaying the body. And as you can see, the hair, specifically hair F, that layer is overlaying it. Right? So it looks like it belongs in that spot in the layers. We're not going to do that as the actual clothing, obviously. That was just an example. One thing to note, if you want to make clothing that matches the game's army color palettes, I've created some little palette swatches here that you will see on the clothing palette layer. All you have to do is just take one of these, just sample it, and you can draw in army palette colors. And what that does is it makes it so that you can create a mask, letting the game know, okay, these are army colors, and then when it gets into the game, these colors will get switched to the colors of whatever army this character belongs to. If this is a good guy character, by default, they're probably going to be in the blue army, so anything that's violet will get hue shifted until it is blue. Likewise, if they are brought in as an enemy, they're probably in the red army. All the violets will get hue shifted until they're red, and so on. These red ones are secondary army colors. So in the violet army, red is the sort of secondary color. So anything that's red in here, if you draw the mask so that the game recognizes those parts of the image as being army colors, it will hue shift the red bits until they match the secondary color of the correct army. So, if this is a blue army character, anything red will become violet. If this is a red army character, anything you draw that is red will become green, and so on. Okay, that's enough about palettes. Let's actually do some drawing. For this first one, I think I'm going to largely avoid doing army colors. I think this is just going to be a color of its own. I think I'm going to go for like a sort of an almost black, like a charcoal color to start off. So the way I usually approach drawing clothing is, or anything really, any sort of digital painting, is I will usually lay down a layer of just whatever is the darkest color I intend to use. And then from there, I will sort of layer progressively lighter colors, and then I will sort of blend between them. So let's start with the puffy shoulders. Puffy shoulders are a rather distinctive feature that we're going for here. I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit just to make it a little easier to see. So I'm going to try to make this level with that more or less. So we've got our puffy shoulders to start. And yeah, we want a sort of a neckline that scoops downward, and then we want a sort of a light undershirt with a collar, it looks like. Do I have that more or less right? Yeah, it looks like it scoops down almost from... That's a little hard to tell because of that cat in the way, but it looks like it scoops down from like just a little over from after the this ends. So really, this should probably be even bigger. And just to make it easier for me to see, I'm actually going to turn off the hair F layer and the hair B layer. Our model here is going to be hairless for a little bit, and she's just going to have to deal with it. Hopefully she'll be okay. Alright, so those are the dark bits, and yeah, I guess this is all just going to be black, because the sleeves are also black. So now that we've gotten that done, let's create another layer. I like working in different layers just because it makes it a lot easier for me to sort of visualize what's going on and keep things separate. Yeah, so we're going to start like this. As you can see, because this is on its own layer, I don't have to worry about painting over all of these shapes we just created. With the black, I can work on these separately without too much interference. It just makes things a lot easier. So, let's see. So we want this to go about maybe halfway up the neck, thereabouts. All right. She almost kind of looks like a pilgrim right now, but we're not done yet. We'll keep working. So, Yeah, what we need now, we need some swooping colors. So I think we're going to go ahead and pick a darker color and start working on those shapes a little bit. And we'll lower the size of our brush so it's not getting in the way. And I know I'm not looking at chat right now, but I will come check in just a second to see if y'all have any questions so far. Okay, no questions, looks like. Cool beans, let's continue. So one thing that I find very helpful sometimes when working in this program is being able to rotate the canvas. It just makes it a lot easier to get the right angle sometimes. Like if I'm doing like this, I'm right-handed, so it's just much easier to do a correct controlled line when I'm doing it like that and it's on its side versus, you know, otherwise. Okay, we got that. Let's trim this a little. Okay, now that I'm looking at this, these two are very much asymmetrical. I need to work on that shape a little. How long should these be? Yeah, these are pretty long. In fact, even this is probably too short. So let's go ahead and make these longer. Once again, I'm going to rotate this just to make it easier to draw that line. If you are using Krita and you want to do this too, the shortcut for what I just did is right-click. It's real easy to do. Alright, let's see how this looks. Okay, we're getting closer. It's looking a little better. Let's take another peek at that. So these actually meet in the center in this one, which is interesting. Let's see if we can make that happen. And then it looks like we've got these sort of vertical pleats. Too close. don't actually love that. Let's trim this back a bit. Extend the white bits here. Alright, we've got the basic shapes of the shirt itself, and I will have one more layer on top, I think, or maybe just here. And that'll be for the little, I guess that would be a bow? It's a little odd that it's only the bottom part of a bow looks like, but hey, whatever. So let's see, what color do we want? Maybe this one we can make army colors. That makes sense to me. So let's go ahead and nab this color here for the bow. Actually, let's put this on top. Let's make this easier for ourselves. Fill this in using the fill tool. Unfortunately, the fill tool in Krita is one of its weak points. It is not super great. It always leaves these kind of annoying little lines that you then have to fill in manually afterwards. It's one of the few things about the program that I'm not like super wild about. We could actually use this to sort of connect these a little more cleanly. Okay, so we've got our basic shapes now. I'm just going to go ahead and save so that we do not lose all that progress we just made. And now we're going to start defining things a bit. So I'm just going to make another layer here. We're going to grab a lighter violet, wherever that might be. Ah, there it is. And we are going to start painting a bit. So there are a bunch of different brushes you can use for painting in Krita. These are sort of my favorites that I have in this wheel. They're set up as, I think, literally my favorites. I'm going to start with this one. This one does not automatically blend with anything, I don't think. But it does a rather nice job as just a paintbrush for just laying down colors. One thing we want to take note of, the light is coming from the top right. You can see it because of the way that light is reflecting off the face, and you can see the shadows are sort of on the other side of that. So we want to match that light direction in our own painting here. So I'm going to start with a lower opacity than 100. I don't want to go too hog wild. And we're just going to start laying down some colors. It's okay if we go outside the lines a little bit, we can clean that up after. We just want to get the basics. Let's not go too crazy though. Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not super wild with how this particular ribbon looks in a more realistic style. Like, when it's stylized like that, it looks good. I think we need to probably make it a little less geometric here. But we can play with that. Let's just clean this up a little bit. And let's try a different shape. Let's go for like an actual proper ribbon with this. That's not gonna work. Let's do that. Okay, so that's kind of the shape we're going for with the bow, at least to start. We are going to obviously keep on refining this. Any questions so far? Is everyone following along okay? Is this making sense to folks, what we're doing here? Oh, whoops, did not need to do that. Let's redo that stroke. Let's grab that. Let's do the other one. So this is sort of the rhythm of digital painting. You're grabbing colors, you're defining shapes, and then you're going back and you're refining until you get what you like. And we're getting closer with this. How's this look? Yeah, we're getting closer. We're getting closer. I want to make this ribbon a little thicker though. So this top bit, we're gonna refine that more later, but feeling pretty good so far. Let's take a look at the chat. Thank you, Mickey. I appreciate the compliment. Tacitus says, I'm not sure if I will end up making portrait assets, but so far you're making it look easier than I expected. Yeah, it's honestly not really all that hard. especially if, you know, if you're making all of your own original portraits, then it's even easier because you don't even need to worry about trying to keep things aesthetically consistent with the existing assets. You just do what you want, and that's cool. You know, there's plenty of games with portraits that are less refined and painterly than the default together in battle assets. You don't have to do it that way. You can do pretty much whatever. In fact, in the last update, last month's update, I made it so that... Wait, was it last month's update? Or was it this one's? Man, I can't even keep track anymore. Anyway, in one of the recent updates, either one yet to come soon or one which came recently, I made it so you can just create your own single image portraits that you can just sort of like plop in your own custom campaigns and just load from outside of the game. So you don't even have to interact with the game's portrait asset creation. You can just draw single frame assets and just use them as the portraits, which is even easier than what we're doing here. Marshall says, I like the shading tool. Cool. I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to with the shading tool, but we're actually going to get into more of that now. I'm going to show you a different brush. So this is the paintbrush I have been using, which, as mentioned, is pressure sensitive and kind of follows what you do, but there are these ones which have this little water drop symbol, these sort of lavender ones. These are meant to emulate watercolors, and they're really neat. They actually blend the colors for you a bit when you paint, which, you know, makes it a little easier if you're trying to do some color blending. You don't have to do quite as much manual selecting of colors, but you do still need to do some of that. So here's kind of like the traditional method, right? You're gonna pick a color that's intermediate between your two palette colors, right? This is the light one, this is the dark one, and these are kind of intermediate. We're gonna grab one of those, and we're gonna use that to kind of blend between the colors that are there already. And that helps us to establish more of a natural looking transition between our colors. And once you've done that, you can do it again. You can go and select one intermediate between those colors. And now you're smoothing it out even more, creating even more of a sort of a natural gradient. So on and so forth. Let's go ahead and do a bit of smoothing. This one needs it a lot more. We'll do a bit of color smoothing here. Let's snag an intermediate color. And we'll smooth this out a bit. And likewise with the dark colors, we'll pick one intermediate between those, and we'll smooth those out. Dark one just to establish this little kind of knot-like thing going on with this little ball of fabric here. And we'll start adding these little wrinkles, these little things that make it look like it's fabric. Because that's what fabric does, it creases a little bit. Oh, no, we want that one. So let's redo that. Maybe we'll go a little broader and a little lighter on this one. Alright, so we've got a lot of dark colors in. Let's go ahead and grab a nice light one, and we'll start doing some highlights. And I think for this we're actually going to start with the airbrush. I try to avoid using the airbrush too much just because it can be overused very easily, but when you want it, you want it. It's very handy for establishing a smooth gradient on things, and particularly a very like satiny highlight like the sort we're going to add to this ribbon. I think it's perfect for. And let's add some over here. And let's go ahead and grab one of our watercolor brushes and we'll just massage it a bit. Add some highlights here on the knot. And maybe just a smidge. Yeah, let's add some highlights to this as well. Lower the opacity a bit, so we're not just laying down huge globs of it. That one. Let's do this one real first. Alright, we'll put that aside for a moment. We've got our bow tie, or our bow, I guess not really a bow tie, but we've got it looking like a thing. Let's go ahead and flatten this with the layer below. So the bow tie is now one distinct layer unto itself. And let's go and work on the dress a bit. So one thing I like to do when I am working with a layer like this is I like to isolate what I'm working on. And having just one undifferentiated color as the base layer for a layer makes that real easy. So we're going to create a second layer on top of that, and with this selected, using the magic selection tool, everything we paint will stay within the bounds of these shapes. So we can kind of paint a little more freely. We don't have to worry about going outside the lines, as it were. So let's go ahead and create a nice, it's got a nice, like, yeah, well, that's all right. We can work with that. Let's get this and just establish a bit of shape to this. So again, we're sort of modeling the light coming from the top right. That is what we're trying to sort of capture here. Actually, with that one, I should be a little more careful. I'm going to reduce the opacity of... Actually, this layer can stay 100. I'm going to reduce the opacity of these layers just so we can see the curve of the shoulder underneath. I want to make sure that as I'm applying these highlights, that I'm not making it look like this is all just a big sphere cutting directly through her chest. Her chest extends out here, so we want to be at least a little bit aware of what we're doing there. Let's switch to brush so we get a little more control over what we're doing. Okay, opacity back at 100. I now have a good sense of where the boundaries of this are, so we can proceed from here. With the opacity turned back up on this. Whoop, wait a minute. I painted on the wrong layer. Let's not keep that. Got to make sure we are painting on the correct layers here. Problem with painting on the wrong layer is, of course, if you paint on the wrong layer, this layer ceases to be the thing we can use to just immediately grab the shape of the dress, right? That makes it a lot less useful to us. So we want to keep all of the details and highlights and other things on a second layer for that reason. Yeah, if the music is too loud, let me know. I will lower it. Here, let me know how that is. Let's do a little bit more textured brushwork. I haven't really done much of that yet. I quite like the textured brushes in Krita. They really lend some class to the proceedings, I think. Let's grab an intermediate color and work with that a bit. Nope. I've once again drawn on the wrong layer. Yeah, let's make sure we're on the correct layer for this. Grab an intermediate color. And we can lower the opacity on this to make blending a little easier. And as you can see, my brushstrokes are going well outside these lines, but because we have the area selected, it's actually just behaving itself. It's staying in the lines. Which makes things just so much easier. Do not want that. Lower the opacity a bit more. Okay, we need to do a bit of blending here. I think I will break out the water brush for that. The watercolor brush, rather. Grab that color, and let's do a bit of blending. So we're kind of trying to maintain the shape, but at the same time, we want the colors to blend a little more seamlessly. Like, we don't want this super harsh boundary between shoulder, sphere, and whatever this is. No shade to whoever designed the, you know, the original dress, by the way. I'm sure I could not do as good a job designing an original dress. Alright, so that is that side okay for now. Let's refine this one a bit more, and then we'll work on this undershirt a bit. This. By the way, how's the volume? Is everyone able to hear me okay? Just want to make sure the music is not drowning me out, as it apparently was before. Just defining the shape a little bit here. You know what, I kind of want to do that on the other side too, because I feel like it's lost a little bit of its spherical shape. Sounds good. All right, thanks, y'all. Appreciate it. Okay. So that's the dress for a little bit. Let's set that aside and return to this shirt layer here. Turn the opacity back up. So I think what we want to do, so yeah, this is all beneath the bow. Let's just turn off the bow for a little bit, just to make it easier to get at this stuff. And let's do a little bit of defining. Just a little bit of blending the colors and defining shapes and such. And we will select a sort of a lighter intermediate color and continue. This is not meant to be a particularly thick piece of fabric, so we don't need this to get too dark here. I think we're actually going to just kind of whiten this out a little here. Yeah, this edge here should, in theory, be the some of the lightest that this fabric gets. So we're going to just trace a nice highlight over it. Okay, so there's that one, like, sort of nice and smoothed out, and let's go do the other one. And I am going to go ahead and rotate the canvas here to make this a little easier for me. may be a bit of a tryhard who does everything the hard way in other areas of development, but not in this one. Trying to spare my wrists a little bit. Let's go ahead and grab an intermediate color. And we'll do a bit of shading and defining. Okay, let's right the ship, zoom out. How's this look? Okay, we're getting there, we're getting there. So, let's move on to the shirt for a bit. The interesting thing about the shirt is these lines, right? These are meant to be pleats in the fabric, which means we can't just smooth these out the same way we would, the lines at the edge of the collar. We need to actually keep a dark bit for them in place. That said, they're not looking super great right now, so we're going to refine them a bit. So let's go ahead and let's see, how do we want to do this? I think we'll just start by doing this a bit. Just get these lines a little less uniform. Or at least uniformly that color. And we are going to end up shading beneath the collar because, well, that collar should be throwing a bit of shadow on the shirt beneath it. Not a ton on this side, but quite a bit on this side because, again, remember, the light is coming from that direction. I don't know if you can even see that. But here, hang on. Let's make this a little more visible. The light is coming from that direction, so we want to make sure that it is casting shadows beneath things that it would be hitting. This is all just initial. We're going to come back and define things some more. Actually, this one should maybe be like that again. Okay. And now on this side, because the light is coming from the top right down toward the bottom left, this is where we really see the shadows of this collar show up. Okay. Now then, back to smoothing out those lines. Oh, not sure what happened there. Calm down, Krita. Okay. Making progress. Let's go back over this way. Okay, we're starting to look all right. Starting to get where we're heading. Ah, yes, that's where that that's where that arrow went. Let's we can erase that one, I think. Is it here? Yeah. Which layer are you on? Oh, you're here. Okay. Yep. Let's get rid of that. Let's save so we don't lose our progress if something bad happens. Hi, Scumbad. Is bald a hairstyle in-game? Not currently, but there's nothing stopping you from adding it. It'd be real easy. You just put a totally empty image in, make it a hairstyle, and boom. Bald is there. In fact, I could probably add it pretty quickly if I remembered to. All right, let's add a nice shadow beneath this bow onto the shirt layer. Yeah, here we go, shirt. I should probably label these so that I have an easier time shifting between them. There we go. Bow. Okay. So, back to the shirt layer. Let's actually add something just above the shirt layer to be the shadow for the bow, just to make our lives a little easier. And let's grab this color since we are using this, and let's shift from the eraser back to a brush. Yeah, unfortunately, we really want this to show up beneath there, so let's do that. Yeah, seeing that now, I think I should darken the shadow underneath the collar, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay. We've got a nice little shadow for our bow now. Let's return to the shirt layer and darken up the shadows there beneath the collar a bit. think I want to actually darken the pleats and darken the bits just around the edges of here a little bit. So let's actually, let's get a little bit of a darker color. And let's see, what brush do we want? Like, this is working okay, but I think I actually want to switch to this guy here. This particular brush is one I actually use a lot. It's very good for just laying very consistent lines of color. Just get it nice and small. Let's rotate our canvas to make things easy. And let's trace some lines. Too hard there. Okay. Okay, so the outline of the color is now much more defined, which is nice. And let's grab that and clean this up a little bit. This, and let's actually clean up the neckline slightly. Just a smidge. Nope, nope, nope. There, doesn't that look nicer? We do kind of want, so this is going up higher. We really want this to come up, be a little more symmetrical. So let's snag a color here, and let's fix it. And we can turn this layer off just to make it easier to see what we're doing here. Which is something you just gotta do sometimes. At a certain point, this just disappears behind the neck. It comes around back behind. And you're probably not going to see any of this in-game at all, just because the head asset will be in the way. But, just in case, and just because I'm detail-oriented like that, I like to fix it up anyway. Just in case. Let's get our head back. And actually, we could do with adding a bit of shadow here to sort of continue the shadow that the head is casting on the neck from the jaw there. So let's grab a slightly darker color. And let's do it. Are we tilting the canvas again? You bet we are. Goodbye, head. We will meet again. For those of you who may be wondering what this music is in the background, this is the soundtrack to one of my older games, Telepath RPG Servants of God. This was second to last game that I made in Flash before I switched over to Unity. Released in 2012. There, I've done it. I've made myself feel old. Let's add a little bit of an airbrush. Let's do a little bit of cheating just to smooth out this gradient a bit. Oh yeah, look at that. That's nice. Okay. Let's right the proverbial ship. Let's pop the head back into existence. And voila, look at that. We have a continuous shadow. It's almost like her head is really there. Whoops. Nope, not that color. Let's grab this. Firm this up slightly. Okay. And blend a little bit using this. All right. Pretty good, pretty good. Let's save our work again. Scumbad, Ghost Waltz, Beneath the City, and You Don't Know Me are my favorite of your older tracks. Ah, thanks, Scumbad. I'm glad you like it. Tacitus says, I actually can't hear the music anymore since it got turned down. Are others hearing it still? That's a great question. If no one is hearing it, I will turn it back up a bit. Let's try 66%. Let me know what y'all think about that. I'm a big fan of Ghost Waltz too. Thanks, Tacitus. Yeah, Ghost Waltz is one of a few different tracks in the game where I'm not going to say that I like successfully imitated Chopin, but I was inspired by him, and I tried a little bit to kind of capture a bit of that magic. Kind of a weird inspiration for, you know, music in a game set in a fantasy Middle East setting? Probably, but I don't know. I like how it sounds. Okay, that's our shirt layer, and we've got that. We've got our highlights there. Bow there, bow shadow. Let's name this so we can keep track of all our layers. All right, I think it's time to work on this again. Let's take a look at the thing we're getting inspired by here. Yeah, it doesn't really give a ton of information as to, like, what is the fabric, what is the lighting. It is in this way that anime-style drawings just straight up cheat. Alright, let's add a little texture to this. Yes, we should probably do our little trick from before and select the layer just to keep things in bounds. Let's grab that color. Blend, blend, blend. Don't love how that looks. Let's undo that. So it's at times like this that I feel sometimes you need to do a little research. Like, let's just pop our little heads onto the internet and see if we can find a sort of a black schoolgirl dress and take a look at how the lighting actually behaves with it. Scumbad asks, what made you choose telepathy as a basis for a power system way back when as opposed to just plain magic? That's a great question. To be totally honest with you, I don't really 100% remember, but I think I was just like, I wanted to try something a little different. Black schoolgirl dress. Right, because this is kind of what this is inspired by, right? I'm not just making this up, right? This is exactly the kind of thing that yeah, okay, fine. That image is asking us to or that outfit is trying to emulate, right? This is very much in the same sort of vein. So looking at this, it's very matte. There's very little lighting variation on it. Like, to the point where I feel like this is actually more in the way of specular highlighting than a real-world dress of this kind would have. So I should probably actually get rid of some of the highlights here. Just let it be as flat as possible. Particularly on this one. We'll define some more. But yeah, Scumbad, I just, I don't know, there's so many RPGs out there, and so many that do very similar things, and I don't know, I just wanted to try something a little different. I think it's good to, like, if you're making a game, I think it's good if you can define an identity for it that's different from all the other things that came before, as opposed to just being like, look, me too. I also can do the thing, you know? That looks better. Yeah, let's do a bit of that over here too. Also, you know, it's just not interesting to just do the exact same thing that everyone else does. Like, if you're just going to make a game that does the same thing that a million other games have done, why? Why are you making the game? What's the point at that point? Those other games already exist, you know? I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's what you're getting. At least for right now. Yeah, we can reduce the highlights a little bit more. That's a little too aggressive. And of course, the real answer to the question, why bother if you're going to just do the same thing a million other people did, is money, because that is what sells, unfortunately. But from an artistic integrity perspective, that is why you would try something a little different. All right. All right. I think that's pretty decent. I could shade a little more here. So let's do that. And I could probably make that bow look nicer, but we're getting pretty close, I think, on this one. That. Let's lower the size. Let's grab a nice intermediate color and let's extend the shading a bit. All right, not bad, not bad. Let's maybe do a little bit more here. Yeah, and we can just keep refining this, right? Like we can keep smoothing out these shadows a bit. And just generally making it look more and more polished and more refined. Let's grab a lighter color here as we continue to refine this. And yeah, let's rotate this and let's massage these shadows under the collar a little bit. Just a smidge. Once we reach a stopping point with painting this, I'm going to show you how to actually now add it to the game. I think the little like tutorial text that comes with the game does a pretty good job of explaining that, but you know, it's helpful to have a visual representation of it too, I think. So if we're going to do that. We're not messing with the bow shadows because that is on a second layer. We're going to get to that in a second. Let's rotate. And we can grab an intermediate color here because the shadows are a little darker on this side. Okay, getting somewhere. Let's work on the bow shadow a bit. Oops, don't like that. Let's go ahead and switch to a brush that will not smear that. Okay, and we'll get a little intermediate color here. And we will finish out the smoothing with our watercolor brush. All right. Not too shabby. I do want to make this bow look a little better, but I think that will be it once we're done with that. I may, of course, I do reserve the right to continue messing around on my own after stream, but we're just about done with this one. So let's get our opacity back to 100. And let's just make this bow bowier. Let's actually create another layer for this. This will be like beneath our existing bow. We'll build upon it. Actually, I want to use a different brush. Let's use this one, because we're just laying down color here. Oh yeah, look at that. That is a nice flouncy bow. Much better. So that's that side, and then we will bow it up on the on the other side here. this side of it, rather. Nope. Nope. Alright, we've got our base color down. Let's go ahead and work off of it. Marshall asks, can we see her hair again? How do you make believable hair? I'll get to that in a minute. That is an interesting question. And I think a lot of making believable hair comes down to two things: layering and using a nice textured brush. I'll show you in a sec. Scumbad says, Carolina Zabrowska and Bernadette Banner have great channels focused solely on older human fashions if you're ever looking for more examples on how light might change the appearance of certain fabrics. Thanks, Scumbad. That is helpful. I think if you ask most artists, how do you figure out how light affects different things, they'll tell you pretty much the same thing, which is go find a reference. And this is something that regrettably has been made a lot harder in the age of generative AI, because now when you search for references online, you have to try very hard to avoid getting fake references, things that are just made up by Midjourney and the like. In the old days, meaning like a couple of years ago, you could just search for stuff on Google and get really helpful reference material without having to worry about your reference being complete nonsense. But unfortunately, we are no longer in those times. At least until such time as Google's shareholders stop believing that AI everything is the way to go. Let's go ahead and grab this. And another intermediate color. And actually, let's swap over to our little watercolor brush here just to make this easier. It really is helpful for blending like this. So effortless, so easy. Just look at that. No, don't like that. Gotta go with the curve. Let's adjust our angle here a bit. Trying to create a little bit of a crease in the fabric here. that one's looking better. Let's move on to this one. And once this is done, we will call it a day on painting this particular thing. And I will show you how you then take this, or really anything, and add it as a custom portrait asset. Let's grab the color. Color, lay it down. All right, so that's pretty good. You know what? There is one more thing I want to do, and that is I want to actually add a little bit of a shadow between some of these layers, just to make it feel a little more integrated. Yeah, like just, you know, let's use the bow shadow layer for this actually. Grab this. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow cast by this part of the shoulder pad onto the shirt. I feel like that makes it a little bit more believably integrated. There. And I would like to add a little bit of a shadow from the collar onto the skin, just a little bit. So we're actually going to do this below the shirt layer. I'm just going to grab a shadow color from the body. And this is one of the reasons you want to be working within the Portrait Asset Maker file, is because you can just grab these colors very easily and use it to make whatever you paint feel like it is integrated with the other assets there. Let's grab that intermediate color. And let's grab this. Just to even that shadow out a little. Let's see how that looks. A little too dark, but we're getting there. don't want it coming right up to here, I think. That flattens this a little. A little of this just to blend it a little better. All right. I'm not saying this is the greatest piece of art ever made, but I feel pretty happy with it. I'm gonna add like maybe a little more shading over here. And we'll call it done. All right, good enough for now. Let's, you know what, now that I'm looking at this, I feel like these shoulder pads are not quite, yeah, they're not even close to even. That one on the left really needs to be embiggened, as they say. But that's pretty easy. We can do that right here in this layer. Let's just grab this. Okay, that's something. Let's check our frame here. Are we in frame? We are, unfortunately not. So we need to reduce the size of these gargantuan shoulder thingies just a smidge to bring us within the frame. We could have this go out of frame, and like it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it does make it behave a little bit weirdly with some things in Together in Battle, and it's generally best not to do that. If you can help it. Which, it just so happens, we can. We can help it, folks. What do we think? Does this look okay? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments. Question, why the random hip-hop beat? Love it, I just never got why. Well, Scumbad, here's the answer to your question. Back in college, I used to produce instrumental hip-hop and trip-hop for fun. And that particular track was just something I produced one day because I wanted to try it. And when I was making Telepath RPG Servants of God, I was like, wait a minute. This actually kind of works well for like when you're dealing with the Black Rose and other shady folks. So I was just like, whatever, we're using it. That is the answer to your question. All right. While I wait to see if y'all think this is acceptable, I'm just going to assume it's acceptable, and I am going to prep this thing for export. So the reason I have this frame layer here is that by default body images like this are 2048 by 2048 in Together in Battle. And again, you don't have to be exactly, whoops, not that one. You don't have to be exactly those dimensions, but the closer you are to it in general, the better things are going to go. Let's try it again. And yeah, can we see a little? Yeah, we can. There's a little bit of shoulder there. Let's just pretend that doesn't exist. That little bit of arm. Just kidding. It's all contained within the clothes. You didn't see anything. Thanks, y'all. I'm glad you think it looks good. Let's. So we're going to crop this now to 2048 by 2048. And you can dial this in over here in Krita. It makes it quite easy, actually. Let's just make sure that the boundaries of this exactly align with our frame layer here. Yep, looks good, looks good, looks good. Okay, so here's what we do. We now double click. And we are going to hide everything above the body layer. And voila, just like that, we have our clothing asset. Pretty cool, huh? So let's just go ahead and save as. So we are going to put this into Documents, My Games, Together in Battle, Mods, Common, Portraits, Human, Female, Clothing. And let's just name this Dress 2. We're going to save this as a PNG file. And you may notice, oh, we have this dress here. You may recall, if you caught the last stream where I tried this out and my mic wasn't working, this was what I painted during that stream. So this is Dress 2. Let's just go ahead and save it here. We want to make sure to embed the sRGB profile. I don't think you're going to need to force convert to sRGB, but why not? And this is important. Make sure Store Alpha Channel is checked. If it is not checked, then all of the transparent bits of the image are going to get filled in white. It's annoying. You don't want that to happen. And we do not want to also save this as a Krita file. Okay. And voila. So we now have our own little image. That we can work off of. So let's open this as its own thing. Open a new document. Voila. So this has all been merged down to a single layer. So anything we do will affect every layer at once. Let's not do that, obviously. The next thing we need to do is to create a mask. So let's just grab template mask.png, drag it in here and drop it, and we're going to insert it as a new layer. So the idea here is anything that isn't covered by skin needs to be black. Except if we want it to be army colors. If we want it to color swap, then it needs to be blue or red. Anything that is skin needs to be green. And that way the game will know, okay, we need to hue shift this part of the image so that it matches the character's skin tone. Now, obviously, the default there is just someone with no clothing, right? Everything is green. But obviously this character does have clothing, so we need to do a little bit of figuring out what parts of the image are not green. This is where our friend the Magic Wand selection tool comes into play once again. We'll click that, we'll hold shift, we'll click that, and we'll just kind of keep clicking until we have all of the skin selected. And just like that, that is the only part of the image we actually want to be green. So now we can turn this off, select our mask layer, and we can do select invert selection. Now every part of the image except this is selected. We are just going to go ahead, we're going to grab our brush, we're going to grab this here, we're going to make sure this is set to 100% black. It is important that whatever color you use with the mask is just 100% that color and nothing else. And we're just going to paint out all this bit so that the game doesn't think that it needs to hue shift the dress to match the character's skin tone. Now, that would be the end of it, but as you may recall, our bow is meant to be an army palette color, which means we need to paint that in so that the game knows, oh, this is something to hue shift to match the army palette. So let's get rid of this selection. And let's zoom in here. Let's see if we can magic lag. That's pretty good. That's pretty close. Let's, so we can do a thing here. In select, we can grow our selection. Let's grow it by like 1 pixel. And there we have sort of selected all the little bits where it's like partly purple, but it's feathered a little bit. And we've also, that has gone to sort of gobble up all of the bits that were not selected, those little individual pixels. So that's good. We can now turn this down. Let's go back to our template layer here. And we're going to paint this in pure blue. And with the background off, this is what the mask looks like. This part is skin, this part is army color. Nothing else in the image gets hue shifted. Right? Everything else in the image just stays the color it is. We're not changing the whites or the grays or the shoulder pads or whatever. That will always be white. That will always be black and charcoal gray. But this will get shifted to be blue if the character's in the blue army, or red if the character's in the red army. And this will get shifted to match their color tone. That is what the mask does. So having done that, real easy, we just file, save as, and we use the exact same file name as this. We just add mask to the end, and that's it. Save. Dunzo. So just for comparison's sake, this is what we created. This was the request. Not identical, but pretty similar. And hopefully folks like it. So that's enough of that. Let's go ahead, we'll close that. And we can close this now. So now that we've created our image and we've created our mask based on the image, we can go ahead and we can go try to get it in the game. So the way we do this is pretty simple. In our portrait data file, which we should have in, again, this file should be in portraits here, right? This file here, portraitdata.xml, sitting in documents, my games, together in battle, mods, common, portraits, portraitdata.xml. As you can see, we have this open in Notepad++. This is another free, and I believe open source, though I could be wrong on that, but it's definitely free program It's really good. I highly recommend it. It makes it way easier to read XML because it has this like color coding. Every attribute is red. The stuff in the attributes is like this sort of like dark lavender, and it's auto bolded, and it's so nice. It's so much easier to read stuff. Anyway, yeah, we have portrait data.xml open in Notepad++, and here's how we add new clothing. We have all these different tags, if you will, for each of the species in the game. Here we made clothing for a human woman portrait. So we're going human. Within there we have two subtags, male and female. We're going to female. We just have an attribute that says clothing equals, and we just add whatever stuff we want to become an option in the game. So dress 2 doesn't exist in the game right now, right? We just painted that. You just saw us paint that. So in order for the game to know, hey, this is a clothing option for all human women, we have to add this in. And if we create a dress 3, then we'll just add a comma and dress 3, and so on. And we just keep adding to that for all the options that we're adding among our custom stuff. But for now, let's just save this. And I'm gonna hope this works. This will be embarrassing if it doesn't work, but I think it'll work. I'm gonna open up Together in Battle, and we are gonna try it out. Let's see if dress 2 shows up. Oh, Steam is updating. What do you know? Steam does love updating. That is one of its favorite things to do. Not that I blame it. I like updating too. I push updates all the time. So, chat, I did say that I would listen to requests on this stream. Are there any requests? I'm going to say right now, up front, I'm not going to do eyes or mouths because, oh boy, it's making me sign in. Hold on just a second, folks. Let's see if I can just not. Can we just not do that right now? Help, I can't sign in. Okay. Never mind that. Let's see if we can just open this locally. Anyway, while I figure that out. Scumbag, gotta see an afro. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Marshall did ask how to do hair, so you know what? I'll do an afro. Why not? Yeah, unfortunately, OBS just will not show Krita unless you're casting your entire screen. And for privacy reasons, I prefer not to just, like, show my entire screen while I'm going through stuff, but y'all will have to trust me. This is how you add stuff to the game. Meanwhile, let's do a little hair while we're here. So hair is divided into two layers: front and back. Back goes beneath absolutely everything. Front goes on top of just about everything. Like, there are hair accessories and hats that go on top of the hair layer, but otherwise, like, the front hair layer is on top of everything. As far as the default palette, what you see here is the default palette. Let's go ahead and just grab the darkest color we can from the back of hair, and we will start with that. Let's go ahead and create a new back hair layer. And as far as making believable hair, honestly, you just want to grab one of these. Oh, that is not going to look good. I'm going to say right now, making an afro is going to be a ton of work, and that is just because there's a lot of texture to render in an afro. But this is it. Like what I'm showing you right here. This is how you make believable hair genuinely, in general, is you just grab a brush with a lot of texture to it and you let it do the hard work of filling out that texture. And you layer it. You start, just like I said with the clothing, you start with darker colors and you work your way up to lighter colors and you blend in between. You get those intermediate colors in there blending in between, and eventually it will start to look good. Since this is the back layer, this does not have to be super detailed. Yeah, the game's portrait artist is a very talented individual named Georgy Minkov. He did the majority of the portrait assets. There were a couple characters where I wanted big curly hair, and he kind of fudged it a little, which is why you don't have an actual proper afro asset in the game. But yeah, no, I'm with you. There does need to be a proper afro. And right now, what's there is kind of halfway to being a proper afro. All right, I'm going to need to look at a reference before I continue, because I know that is not an afro yet. We're getting closer, though. Nope, I don't care about your little AI thing. Okay. So yeah, we need this to come down further over the forehead and frame the face more closely. Let's use this as a reference. This is a really nice image. What a lovely afro. Okay, so yeah, this needs to cover the ears. This definitely needs to cover the ears. So let's zoom in a bit and see what we can do about that. Okay, starting to look better. Let's grab a somewhat lighter color and work on the texture some more. Grab sort of a more intermediate color. Yeah, part of what's complicated about this is you can see just how highly detailed the lighting and shading is here. Very broadly, it's all a mix of highlights and shadows. So this is going to be very hard to render properly without a ton of time and effort. Which is probably why the artist was not super enthusiastic about doing an afro, but I'm going to at least do, if not a half-ass job, I'm going to do at least like a 75% ass job. How's that? And now that I'm looking at it, I just lit this stupid thing wrong. I've got the light coming from this direction, and that is wrong. So we're just going to undo basically all of that. So done. Yeah, I'm just going to have to paint directly over this, unfortunately. I don't have enough undo to properly undo it. Although, this is giving it a bit more texture, so that's good. A little bit more depth, a little bit more nuance. Let's go ahead and grab a color again. Let's go for like a nice highlight color. And let's reduce the opacity a little bit. So I can do the texture with that completely overshooting it on the color. We'll grab a somewhat more intermediate color. Okay, let's swap this around so that I can work on the side a little more comfortably. All right, I mean, I'm not going to claim that's like the best afro, but that is an afro. It's not a complete crime against humanity, I think. So, yeah. And that actually was not too hard, all things considered. So yeah, that's like one example of hair, right? But obviously most hair doesn't look like an afro, so if you weren't doing an afro, if you wanted to do like more, you know, white person hair, as it were, you would still do something very similar. You would just pick a texture and you would run with it. Now if you've got a part, obviously you want to respect the part. Want to respect the head shape. The good news is, even though there are a bunch of different head shapes in Together in Battle, the difference is really all in the face. Up top, you're not going to need to worry about the head shape being different. And just like we talked about, you're gonna, once you've got the basic shape of your hair, you're going to want to start adding in more layers with different colors to kind of give shape and volume to what you've painted. It's almost kind of like we're brushing her hair, except we are literally brushing it into existence. This is obviously a really quick and dirty example, but hopefully you get the idea. And obviously you just refine it a lot more than this, right? Like you don't just leave it like this, but this is the basic idea. Like, you just kind of keep adding layers and getting the colors right and getting the shape right, and eventually you have something that looks pretty good. Yeah. That's the basic gist. And obviously, of course, you're going to want a back layer as well, so that there's not all this like weird light poking through. And that's real easy to do. You just plop in a back layer and you just say, hey, all this, you can't see it. It doesn't exist, la la la. And voila, that's pretty much it. There's more to it, but you get the idea. That's pretty much how you make hair. And yeah, I'm not going to keep this one because it looks not great. But I will take the afro because I like the afro. I would have to work on that other one a lot more to make it look good, and frankly, it is. Hashtag not worth it, so not doing it. But the afro will be staying. All right, y'all. So I heard a rumor that Actual Lizard is going to be streaming, or may actually already be streaming, a cool little one-off mini campaign that Tacitus made in Together in Battle. I want to check that out, and I could probably use a break on painting, so I'm going to stop it here, but I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Oh, I just noticed another question from Scumbad. I will answer that real fast before I sign off. Trip Hop, yo, do you like Massive Attack? I love Massive Attack. Massive Attack is dope. If you don't like Massive Attack, that's okay. It's probably because you haven't listened to them. You should listen to them. Teardrop, absolute classic, but the entire Mezzanine album is legendary. Highly recommend it. Anyway, y'all, thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this informative and helpful and maybe even a little entertaining. As I mentioned at the start of the stream, all of the tools that I used here today are linked in the description. Krita, it's a free painting program. It's fantastic. The template that you saw me using to paint off of is also free. That is linked in the description. Not free is the drawing tablet that I used, but if you are someone who wants to get into digital painting, it is totally worth saving up a little bit of money to make it happen. Drawing tablets are great. Yeah, that's all I got, folks. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.